Hello everyone, Not Dead Yet here, and very recently, I put out a video on the Ben Askren versus Jake Paul fight card. Now, Jonni Shreve, a creator whom I respect immensely, also put out a video talking about the Ben Askren versus Jake Paul fight card, and he said a few things that I really do not agree with, and I want to talk about it. Before we start, I want to put a big disclaimer that this is not really a hit piece on Jonni. This is not me insulting him or attacking him. I have a ton of respect for him as a creator, and I look up to him immensely. So he is someone I have a ton of respect for. However, just because I respect someone does not mean that I will be scared to call them out and say that I disagree, and that is what this is here. I am opening up a discussion, especially as someone who is lived his entire life in the boxing world, as opposed to Jonni, who is mainly bodybuilding, as well as some football. I don't know his life story, but it seems like he hasn't been as immersed in the world of boxing as I have been. I don't know, he's welcome to correct me. But all that being said, this is not any kind of hit piece on him. This is purely just, let's talk. Because in his own video, in the video that Jonni Shreve released, he talks about how Jake Paul can be seen as kind of a success story. How, you know, Jake Paul has been kind of throughout his entire life acting out and failed at a lot of things. And despite the fact that he has kind of succeeded in life, you know, in YouTube, and he's got a bunch of money, he's still searching for his purpose, and that he may have found that in boxing.
You know, when I see guys like Jake Paul that are just acting out and just, you know, obviously created by a lot of the media, and obviously the attention you get, but I understand, I get it. And I'm always like seeing something like this, I'm like, this guy's just really trying to figure his shit out. He's not fighting any boxers, but the guy's so dead set on thinking that this is my calling. After all this shit that's going out here, this is my calling. I'm a boxer. And I gotta prove to you guys that I'm a boxer. He was so just dead set on proving to himself and everyone else that he can actually fight. A lot of us, as much as I want to say it was like a lot of us can literally take a lesson from this. Sometimes you just gotta just bet on you. Bet on you.
And I'm sorry, but I completely disagree. Jake Paul is not looking to prove himself as a boxer. This is not a case of someone who has found his meaning and found his purpose in life, who was this poor, lost, wandering soul and has suddenly found purpose in the sport of boxing. I've met people like that. I've met a ton of people like that. I consider myself to be a person like that, and I'm sorry, but Jake Paul isn't one of us. And I have recorded many versions of this video, including one where I get really heated. If I still have the clip of it, I'll throw it up. And don't you dare insult me by lumping me and people like me in with Jake Paul! We will do it for free, for nothing! And he's doing it for nothing but clout! But I realized that at the end of the day, getting heated was not the way to go with this video, and it wouldn't really be able to open up any real discussion. And I want to explain just exactly why I got so heated initially when I saw that. Because I don't truly think that Jonni's trying to hurt anybody here or insult anybody. However, I think there may be some unintended negative consequences to the message he's trying to portray, specifically in regards to Jake Paul. Because on the surface level, his message is amazing. It is, look, you can do it. You know, go out there and fight for your dreams, because you know what? It may be you. Why not? Why can't it be me? Right? He says that. Why not me? However, that's not what Jake Paul is doing here. That story, that why can't it be me, is much more akin to Jake Paul's rise on YouTube than it is his rise in the boxing world. What Jake Paul has essentially done is use his money, fame, and status to cut the line. He just said, I am going to be a boxer now. I'm going to throw a bunch of money to cherry pick certain opponents that I know I can beat, who have a ton of notoriety, and and get more money, fame, and status. It's someone who is money, fame, and status, and using that money, fame, and status to get even more money, fame, and status. If Jake Paul truly wanted to prove that he was a fighter, that he wanted to prove that he was a boxer, that he truly believed this is what he wanted to do, and that this was his calling, and that he needed to prove to everyone that he was a boxer, he would be fighting people with a ton of skill and zero clout, as opposed to people with a ton of clout and zero skill. And that is what he is currently doing. And that is what I see so many of people like myself, as well as friends of mine, who fight not for fame, not for money, hell, not even for glory. We pay to fight. This costs us money, especially if we have to travel or whatever. It's incredibly difficult to get funding, and more often than not, this costs us money, and nobody knows our names. And then we put our minds and our bodies at risk. Everyone knows the dangers of the sport. So why do we do it? We do it because we love it. Sheer love of the sport, and passion, and a sense of fulfillment. And having lived my life surrounded by people who truly feel that way, who would fight day in and day out, train harder than you've ever seen, without telling anyone about it, because it doesn't matter, because their passion is the sport. That is not what Jake Paul is doing. Jake Paul is putting everything on display. Look how hard I'm training. Look at the people I've beat. Look how great I am. Look how much I've proved you guys wrong. When in reality, he has proved nobody wrong. He hasn't fought a single boxer. And you are attempting to say to me that he is trying to prove to anyone that he is a boxer by defeating non-boxers? And here's the thing. Jake Paul, one, I'm willing to admit that he is successful and that he has skill. He is great at marketing himself. You don't get a $17 million net worth without having some sort of skill and being able to market yourself. However, when it comes to the sport of boxing specifically, he's actually decent. He is not terrible. He is a pretty good boxer. And if he were actually doing what I said, starting from the bottom and just slowly working his way up the ranks, fighting actual boxers with actual skill and defeating them, I would be one of Jake Paul's #1 supporters. I'd be like, awesome, great, look. Like, you can look, he was a YouTuber a while ago, and through hard work and dedication, he is slowly working his way up the ranks and becoming a real boxer. But instead, he just decided to cut the line, suddenly got pay-per-views with some of the greatest legends of all time in the sport, Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., and then now he's on Triller with Teofimo, who has also signed Teofimo Lopez, Evander Holyfield, and Mike Tyson, headlining a pay-per-view event as the main event, fighting Ben Askren, who again is not a boxer, but is still well-known or at least relatively well-known in the MMA and wrestling communities. And that's an issue, because that to me goes against everything the sport represents. To me, boxing is the complete representation of anyone can do it. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're rich, poor, beautiful, ugly, the nicest man around, or a terrible, terrible person. It doesn't matter, because the only thing the ring cares about is skill. If you have skill, it doesn't matter where you are or where you start, you can rise to the top. And some of the greatest boxers of all time started from absolutely nowhere, like Roberto Duran, Mike Tyson, and countless others. And yet here comes Jake Paul, who completely undermines all of that by paying his way to the top. And it makes the sport look terrible. And he's standing up there with people like Oscar De La Hoya, Teofimo Lopez, Evander Holyfield, and it makes the sport look like a joke. He literally turned boxing into a pay-to-win sport. And sure, boxing has always had a bit of that, especially when you get higher up. You can really start to handpick your fights when you're something like a champion. But we're really seeing something that is rather unprecedented, at least in my lifetime. And that is somebody who started out as an absolute nobody, has earned absolutely zero in terms of title of fighter, and is somehow getting people to believe that he's the next coming of Muhammad Ali. And if you really just want to see how negatively this is going to affect the sport going forward, take a look at what Dana White said about Triller recently, and he basically just said that we're a clown show, that we are a freak show. That Triller, he said that he would never really do business with Jake Paul because he has built a real sport, and he has no interest in dealing with a freak show. And while some people may say that what's going on here is just in regards to Triller and Jake Paul, the fact that Triller has signed on genuine boxing greats will give the impression that this sport is a freak show. And the sad thing is I have to agree. And it's upsetting. And so, sure, in theory, what you have said is all well and good. And honestly, what I believe the sport truly represents. Why not? Maybe you could be world champion. Who says that you can't? But in regards to Jake Paul, it just simply does not apply. But that's just my thoughts. That's really all I have to say. I turned the camera on here to kind of vent my feelings about the way people are talking about Jake Paul and the way people are talking about my sport. If you have anything to add or any responses to this conversation, personally, Johnny, I would love to hear it. I would also like to highlight a comment that was left on my Jake Paul video. I'll put it up right here. I'm not going to leave it. I'm not going to go through it. You can pause it and read it, but it touches upon how Ben Askren's defeat will also ripple through and have negative effects on the wrestling community. And just how this overall is not... It's very hard to spin this into something positive because there are a ton of negative effects and consequences to what Jake Paul is currently doing. But anyway, until next video, I'm not dead yet. And if you aren't either, there is always a tomorrow waiting for you.
Like, I remember never thinking ever that anybody can just be like, I want to go do a boxing match and then have one happen freaking pay-per-view. It's like, wait a minute. So I can just do as best I can on my channel, do as much as I can, and that much of a following will give me that much of an opportunity?